Hey guys, this is Eric Weingart with Weingart Racing. Today's the video you guys have been asking about probably the most, and it's about this set of cylinder heads, which are the Promaxx small bore LS3 heads. In this video, I'm going to show you the actual dyno results used from my 408 dyno mule. I'm going to do all that. I'm going to share the actual dyno numbers with you, the whole specs of the engine. I'm actually even going to share the flow numbers for the heads and some other things too, and see how it compares to the other heads that are tested. Because if you're new to my channel, you might not know this, but if you go back a couple weeks, you can see the progression of all the things that got tested on this particular engine, which I'll give the specs in a minute. Because so far we've tested a set of stock 823 heads, a set of AFR LS3 enforcer heads, and a set of ported 243 cathedral port heads. And now these. These are very, very much requested, and I'll get to go through all that with you. Now, before I do that, I want to talk about something I really would like for you guys to not do. Guys, please do not parrot things. That should be my theme of my whole channel, is please stop parroting things. And you might be asking yourself, what are you talking about? Just get to the dyno numbers. You'll get those soon enough, don't worry. Here's what I mean. So many of you, and myself included for a long time, will repeat things that are said on the internet, parroting. It's things that you might have seen in a forum by some guy who posts 20 times a day, who hangs out with a guy that might do some dyno testing, but really doesn't do dyno testing. Or it's simply speculation of what they think might happen on the dyno, but there are no actual dyno results. And a lot of us repeat that, parroting. Because in all fairness, most of this stuff, like the cylinder head stuff that got tested, all pretty much came from me, like hearing stuff being said on the internet. And I, like many others, repeated the stuff I heard and thought it was true until I got a flow bench, and then I discovered that's not true, which inevitably led to the testing, the dyno testing that I do currently, where I'm like, there are things that I hear repeated consistently on the internet that turn out not also to be true, but it still keeps getting parroted. So as you watch this video, try to keep in mind that I'm going to give you actual dyno effects, not speculation, not what I think happens, it's what really happened on the dyno. So, because there's no less than 3 times last week where someone definitely parroted something, and I know because I tested it, and then the worst part is they argue with me when I have real numbers. The thing with the dyno numbers are, they are the numbers. It is what it is. Now you can speculate about why the numbers did what they did, but the numbers are what they are. So it just is what it is. So please don't parrot stuff. Use any of the information I have, but don't take it as gospel, please. Because this is just one test, and I do many tests with them, obviously, but it's only a test. It needs more to do things. There are certain trends that you're gonna see as I dyno test more often, and like, well, that seems like it's almost confirmed. It's happened like now 5 times. But anyway, just don't parrot stuff. Let's get to this. So this head, this is the Promaxx, and it's their small bore. And I should point out, in the LS world, typically they have like 3 terms. They use something called small bore, medium bore, and large bore. Typically on the small bore side, they're actually talking more about the 5.7 bore. And then the medium bore, typically they're talking about like your 6.0 bores. And then the large bore, typically they're talking about the LS7 stuff. That's not always follows tracks correctly, but that's typically what it means. So for instance, on this one, the small bore LS3 head from Promaxx, it's actually, you would think, well, is it going to fit a 5.3 or 4.7 or 4.8, sorry? No, unfortunately not. It has nothing to do with the actual chamber width. Several people have asked me that. This small bore is actually made more for a 5.7. The width from here to here is made to get closer to a 5.7 bore. You could put the chamber part would probably be okay on a 4.8 or 5.3 bore. That's not the problem. It's the valve. And the name of this is, this small bore head from Promaxx has a 208 intake valve and a 1/600 exhaust valve. The valve has been moved from stock center line. So if you had a stock LS3 head, this intake valve is actually moved off the bore wall quite a bit. And the exhaust is moved, if all, at all. Very little. They're a little bit closer together. However, if you tried bolting these onto a 5.3 or 4.8, that exhaust valve, really the exhaust valve, not so much the intake, the exhaust valve gets really close to the cylinder and extremely close. Matter of fact, I'm fairly certain it would touch. Now, is there a solution to this? Sort of, because This head comes with a 208 intake valve and a 1/600 exhaust valve. If you wanted to try it on a 5.348, what you could do in theory, and I haven't tried it so I can't confirm this, you could take the 1/600 valve and you could cut the valve down to say a 155 head diameter. That would give us more clearance between the cylinder wall, and then you could run that. The catch is you'd still have to do that to the valve job done here. And here's why it becomes a problem. It sounds easy if you don't know any machining. When the valve job's already cut out to 1/6 and you make the exhaust valve smaller, you end up sinking the valve down into the chamber, so it actually sinks in. So what you end up having is you could gain more exhaust clearance for sure, piston to valve wise, but it also makes it flow worse and it does weird stuff. Makes your chambers bigger. The heights at the tip aren't the same, so you almost end up having to run a little bit different length on the exhaust push rod than you would the intake. But it's not to say it's impossible, but that's not really what these are for. So just give you an idea. These ones are supposed to come in two different configurations for chamber size, I want to say, a 62 and a 58. I actually ordered the 62, but these ones actually came in at 57.2 cc's. Now this is just one I use for as a model. The actual ones that I use were on the engine currently, so that's why they're not here in this video. But anyway, this head also has a, I think they claim it's 240 cc's on the intake runner. It's not. I CC'd them, it's 250. 208 intake valve, like I said, and a 1/600 exhaust valve. They are 11 degree head, and I will show the flow numbers and all that as well. They also come with their own rocker stand because you have to use this because the way the rockers line up with stuff, you have to use this one, but it comes with them, so it's not a big deal. And also it's got this huge exhaust ports, much thicker deck than stock. I mean, in all fairness, of all the LS3 heads I'm probably gonna have testing, out of the box, these are probably going to be the best ones. So when I show you the dyno numbers in just a couple seconds, remember this is probably the best you're going to get out of the box. Why? Because this is the Dyno Mules specs. It is a 408 cubic inch LS. That's a 4030 bore, 4-inch stroke. It's got a SCAT 4344 rotating assembly, flat top piston that's from Icon, and it's forged, and really nice piston by the way. But that one gives, depending on the head, obviously it gives different compression ratios. So when I compare it to the other heads, most of the other heads came in between 11.1, and then when I put the 243 heads on, it went up to 11.9, I want to say. With these, with this chamber size that they were, it brought it to 13:1. So of all the heads, that's the reason why I said this one's probably going to be the best of all the heads we test out of the box, simply because it has by far the most compression. So when you see the comparisons today, when I compare it to the highest horsepower head that's been on this LS408 so far, had been the AFR Enforcers, and it made 641. Now all of this was done with the Texas Speed Stage 2 camshaft, which is like a 245, no it's not, it's 229, 245 duration at 50 thousandths, 629 lift, 606 on exhaust, and a 111 or 112 lobe separation. I probably have those specs wrong. You can go look that up, but that's the camshaft that was ran with it. And right now, when you guys go typing, I can already feel it happening. You should have put a bigger camshaft in it. I tested that too, and that will be in a later video. So you could put that comment all you want, but until you see the results, you're speculating. I have tests. Anyway, I was tested with that, and the Enforcers had made the most before. So they made 641. This should be the best because it's 2 points up on compression, which does bring up another point too. This was all tested with a carburetor. I used a Victor Junior intake. I also tried a Super Victor. I won't kill you with the suspense on that. The Super Victor actually makes more power with with this head, with this small bore, which is not by much. We're talking 3 horsepower over the Victor Junior. As far as carburetor goes, it was 1,000 CFM 4150 carburetor, so not under. It definitely had plenty of airflow. And also, I never mentioned this because no one ever asked, but it's 1 3/4 headers. But the timing set the same for all of them. And yes, I did play with it later on. So initially, to make sure all tests stayed the same, all the timing was the same. But on each set of heads, I've also played with timing. And on some, it's not that much of a difference. Less than what the internet claims, speculation. You're lucky if you get 3. Now you could change where that power occurs in the curve, but you ain't gaining 20 unless you're way off on timing. But because these had so much compression ratio, we ran 110 octane gas because it's 13-to-1. So on the AFRs, the ported 243s and the stock 823s, those were all pump gas mix with 110. So it might be 15 gallons of pump gas 91 with maybe 1 gallon of 110. This was straight 110. You might say, ooh, did you try it on E85? I did, and that'll be a later video too. Also, too much internet speculation on that too, because you're about to see a bunch of stuff get proved false on that. But anyway, that kind of gives you the rundown. Let's just get to the dyno numbers, because that's really what you're for, and then I can show you the actual head flows and all that. Okay, this is from last week's, just so you can kind of get an idea. So we're kind of tracking with what's happened in the previous weeks. This is the ported 243 heads. As you can tell, this is the dyno sheet. And I'm gonna tell you each time, ignore this air-fuel ratio that's calculated, which means it uses the air hat and the fuel turbine, then it calculates it. One of the two is not working correctly and it's throwing those off. We actually have a real O2 sensor on there. And yes, I did play with jetting, to several of you have asked. You know what, I never played with jetting when I did the small block Chevy dyno mule that I compared to, and this is the first set of heads you're gonna see that finally beat the small block Chevy. I never played with jetting except for, well, one head, but very, very little. On the LS, I have played with jetting more than any of the others by far to get the most power. So ignore this, trust me, I jetted for the best power. It just is what it is. But anyway, these are the 243s. If you remember right, this was 1,000 CFM 4150, made 618. It made quite a bit of torque though at 559. But this was the 243s. That's not the one you're after. I'm just recapping last week's. This is the AFR Enforcers. This had been the highest horsepower one so far. So this was the best that had been before I get to this to show you, just so you can see a comparison. So best before, the AFR Enforcers, remember they're a 238 cc runner too, by the way. 641 horsepower and it made 555 torque, 11.1 compression ratio. Same parts used. So that's where it's at. Now we switch to these. Remember, going from the AFR to Enforcers to these, hoping for 700, incorrect. This is what we got. Not bad power though. Power jumped up quite a bit to 678 at 6,500 RPM. Torque made a massive jump too to 583 at 5,400 RPMs. It's a nice gain. There's no way to put around it. The only thing that was changed was simply the heads. And when you look at that, it's a pretty colossal gain. Looks really, really nice, but I really thought, and I'll be quite honest with you, I'm kind of disappointed because I really thought I thought when I put this head on, we're gonna hit 700. It's got enough airflow, it looked like, but it made 678. And not bad though, but remember that's 2 points of compression ratio change too. And this brings up some of the speculation. There was a guy on the 243 video who had commented, and he said, you gain 6% for every 1 point of compression. This gained about that from 2 points of compression. So that's speculation, that isn't fact. Unfortunately, the engine doesn't care so much about theory sometimes. What your math doesn't always jive with what it's breathing in. It just doesn't happen that way. It'd like to, but it doesn't always work that way. Here's some other comparisons just so you can get a better idea, because these are just raw numbers. By the way, if you want to purchase these, there's a link in the description, and I will text you all these sheets so you can get them on your phone. If you have an iPhone, it's going to come crystal clear. If you have an Android, unfortunately, it's not because of the operating systems. This is all being made into a book. So once I get done testing all 5 sets of cylinder heads, you're like, what other heads are you going to test? The large bore LS3 or the medium bore, and then Promaxx head. Also a set of Brodix BR3 heads, and I'm going to port the AFR Enforcer LS3 heads and put those on there and test as well. Also the camshafts, I've got a couple more to test as well. Once that's all done, which I imagine probably around October, it's all going to be one printed book, and you can buy that too. That link will be in the description. But anyway, let's look at some overlays. This is something I tried and it keeps not working for whatever reason. This is the Dominator on the, so it's still the Promaxx LS3 small bore heads, but instead of running the 4150 carburetor, we put an HVH adapter on there and a Dominator. On every engine period, it's always made power except for when it's an LS3 head. The Cathedral one made more power. Every time I've done it on the LS3 head, now it's 3 for 3 sets of cylinder heads, 3 times, it did not make more power. So this is just in case you're wondering, should have put a Dominator on it. I tried it, it made less. Yeah, it's strange. I can't complain. I mean, I can't entirely explain why that's happening on just the LS3 head, but no other engine combination, not the big block Chevy, nothing. Just the LS3 heads, not even the Cathedral heads. Here's your better overlay. This will give you a better idea between the differences between the heads, because this is somewhat shocking when you look at it. We've got the red line here is the small bore LS3 heads. So as you could tell, it's clearly dominating. I mean, it's up considerably over the other two heads. The black line being the AFR Enforcers, which is this one right here. And then we have the blue line, which is our ported 243 heads. If you look, now this part is interesting. Those 243 heads and the lower RPMs, we're starting to pull about 3,700 RPM. They're much, much closer. Really, really close to that Cathedral head. That Cathedral head's really close to that. Of course, once the RPMs get up, it's not near the same. Now the Enforcer heads, don't forget, that's 2 points less compression. So really, this is 2 points less compression. That black line's 1 point less compression. You see what I'm saying? Pretty good jump. But as you can tell, it's still making power here. The interesting part, though, to me, of all of this, is when I'm showing you the flow numbers in just a minute, these flow more than the AFR Enforcers, any of the other heads tested. And a bigger runner, too. So this is actually the biggest, well, besides the stock 823s, this has been the biggest one that's on there. And you might say, why aren't the 823s on here? You'd have to go back and watch that video, but I made a mistake when I had the Texas Speed camshaft in it. I didn't have the timing locked out, so I can't use it as a comparison because it had the least amount of timing of any of them, and it's not fair. Maybe I'll revisit that, but that's the reason why it's not on there. But besides that head, this is the biggest head that's been on the engine, so I really thought, 1, higher compression, we should make more power. 2, it should peak later, but it didn't. Matter of fact, if you look at the AFR Enforcer, which is 20 cc, well, 10 cc smaller or so, it peaked later than that. It actually was rolling over more. And they have the same size valve, by the way. That Enforcer's a 208-1600, so is that. A little interesting, and I don't really have an answer for that, but you could see the definite change. But can't say anything besides this did finally beat the small block Chevy, though, because the best the small block Chevy did was 655. This was better, but remember, it's 13-1, and small block Chevy still 11.1. I'm beating that dead horse because I still get people saying that the LS is superior. Okay. Here's some more interesting stuff just for fun. This is that, just to give you an idea, you can tell the air hat's not even hooked up when we have the Dominator on. This shows you the difference in power that it makes with the Dominator on. It made 668. It actually lost 10 horsepower using that on that. So I don't have an answer for that. It still makes really good power. When you're talking 678 horsepower, it's great. If you were to think about doing this, by the way, you're like, man, that sounds great. Running 85, which I'll do that video and show because I'm gonna bust a bunch of myths, but it's cheaper than the race gas for sure. So anyway, now that does it for the dyno stuff. If you're still an info geek and you want to know more about the flow and stuff about the heads, watch this, because now I can compare them better with flow numbers. So there's one thing I do need to talk about with the heads that I hadn't mentioned. Typically I run the heads out of the box stock, just like you would see here. I was going to do that initially with these Promaxx small bore heads too. I couldn't. So the reason why I mentioned that is I bought them brand new, and you can go back and watch a video why you shouldn't buy, can you just run heads right out of the box? You can't. And everybody makes mistakes, so don't think I'm bashing Promaxx necessarily on this. Everybody makes mistakes, but what happened was I got the heads, and since I'm a cylinder head shop, the first thing I want to do is I want to vacuum test and make sure they actually pass, and I flow every set of cylinder heads I sell. So if you buy any heads from me, you'll get a flow sheet with your heads, because everyone gets a flow sheet. So I'm going to flow every head. And I'd float it, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all, but I didn't care. I still would have ran on the dyno. What the problem was is I vacuum tested all of them, and it didn't pass. It didn't seal. In other words, the valve job wasn't sealed. And what happened was, Promaxx from the factory, they do this is a head they sent me, and I think it's a ringer. It's really good. But anyway, they blend the valve job from the factory and make it look really nice. But what they had done is, and I saw another YouTuber do this, and I cannot believe, and I didn't read the comments, because like, if he doesn't get beat up, I don't know how. Of course, he's got like 200,000 subs. But anyway, what had happened was they were doing the bowl blend, and their cartridge roll hit the valve job and cut right into the valve job. So then they just, whoop, and just skipped, right? Well, it caused a little dip in the valve job and it didn't seal. So because I have to, once I saw that, I couldn't just put that on the engine and run it that way. I'm not that guy. So what I did is I put it on the seat and guide machine and redid the valve job. And then because it leaves a little notch like this, probably a deeper one than that, I just went ahead and blended the chambers. So it's not entirely stock because I didn't want to run it stock like that. It'd be unfair. So I'm gonna show you the difference in flow numbers now. So this is how it came. So when it came, it only flowed like 331, which is crappy. But I was still gonna run it that way, but it didn't seal. So what I did is I redid the valve job. So this is just redoing the valve job and simply blending it. I swear I'm not, no port work extra. I need to, I wanna see what it would do, but no port work extra, promise. Just valve job and blending. Same thing I did on the LS3s when I refreshed them. But it did bring up, this is the difference in flow. It gained like 11 there, 4 there. It lost a little there, lost a little there. It gained 16 CFM at 6. So at 600, it went 343. And it went 350.8 at 625. I just happened to measure that. Exhaust actually gained almost the whole way. Yeah, I know. You really wanted to see one out of the box. I couldn't run it out of the box. I just couldn't do it. My conscience wouldn't let me. But anyway, that's just one. How does this flow numbers actually compare to the AFRs though? Because that's the one that it beat. This is the AFR Enforcer. Remember, this is 238 cc's. This is, and by the way, I've got measurements, 250 cc's. So if we look, the AFR actually outflows it at 274 to a 257 by a bunch. We'll go to 6 real quick just to make the video shorter. 329 on the AFR Enforcer versus 343, so quite a bit up. That's where I really thought, higher compression, way more flow. This thing should be just beating it like a random mule. Not to mention, look at the exhaust. The AFR unfortunately does 215 to 257. I thought for sure this is gonna be a winner chicken dinner. Still up quite a bit, but not as much as I thought. But anyway, I've got more data just for you guys to kind of see. Let me just flip some pages. This is the same thing, so I'll show you that. That's just more heads that got tested. Oh, okay. I have 2 flow inches. I have a Superflow 750 and the Signs Digital 680. The flow numbers you just saw are from the Signs. Typically, it reads less than the Superflow, but I floated them on both. So just to give you an idea, this was that small bore. I did the same thing, just measuring it with the valve job. As you can tell, at 600, it goes 342. That's the small bore LS3. Stock was 334. So about the same as with the Superflow, as the Sains. Now, how does that compare to the AFR? That's the same head. I don't know why. Oh, that's why I did this. This is the swirl numbers. There's a reason why I had that. The swirl meter, that's this little thing right here. It's a little blade that spins. We can measure the amount of swirl that's in the head. I only have it on the Superflow, but I wanted to see compare the swirl between the Superflow or the Promaxx head to the AFR. That's the swirl, and it actually has quite a bit. For those that don't know, LSs typically have no swirl. Like, they're like nothing here. Like, literally, the blade is not moving, spinning at all until about 700. That's why they back up on flow, and then they really get it. But that's a lot of swirl. I don't know if I've seen any other LS head that has 3,800 RPMs and swirl. I mean, none. So just to give you an idea, let's just show you this. This is the AFR Enforcers. Look, it swirls less, but look, its peaks almost 1,000 RPM slower. So this actually has less swirl than this one, the Enforcer does. So the swirl is supposed to help with atomization. Maybe, maybe not, because that's pretty close. Now, these are the rough measurements. This will help you out for those that want to pause and whatever. These are all, this will all be in the printed book, by the way. Here's your measurements for the Promaxx head. So if we look at it, the chamber actually, when it was all done, because of the valve job, was 57.2 cc's. Like I said, it's about 13 to 1 now. The length of the runner was 5.625 long. If you compare that to the Enforcer was 5.5. So actually, this runner is longer by a little bit. Cross-section, the minimum cross-section where the pinch is 3.04 on the Promaxx. It was 2.9, so still bigger. That's why I really thought it would peak later too. These are all velocity measurements if you want to keep it. These are velocity measurements over the center of the short side. That's the center of the push rod. But anyway, Yeah, chamber size, like you tell from the Promaxx was, or from the AFR was 70.2, so yeah, it's a little bit different. Anyway, all this will be in the book. You can pause it to look at it. I'm not going to spend time on the video just reading all this because, quite frankly, no one makes it in the video anyway. But guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this video. It's still a really good head. It makes a lot of power. I was really just hoping for 700. And now you're thinking, well, you put that larger cam in and you make 700. Yeah, I put the larger cam in it too. So wait for that results. That'll probably be next Monday. But yeah, not bad. Just always want a little bit more than you could have. All right, guys, I'm going to cut it off there. Remember, I'm no Superman. I do not port cast iron heads. Please buy my book so I can do more dyno testing. And don't be a parrot.